Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. You are locked on to the only sports talk show that really matters right here on IUP-TV. And I'm your host, Joshua. We've got another loaded show for you here today. We're going to begin in the National Football League, where Brady's bunch owned the Pittsburgh Steelers once again. Nick Foles had himself a day, and our analysts will give you their predictions for the playoffs now that the season is in the latter stages. We're going to then send it to the Rivalry Rampage segment, where we will ask a simple question: who is better, the Penguins or the Rangers this time? We will preview the NCAA men's basketball season. Our analysts will give you an in-depth look at that. We'll then send it to the rapid fire segment. Our analysts will have 30 seconds to answer a ton of sports questions from Sean McCarthy. Then we will send it to the Crimson Huddle. The IUP Crimson Hawks battle the Clarion Golden Eagles, and we're going to look forward to what they have to do to beat the Gannon Golden Knights in this game. And then we will send it and close the show off with the 2-minute drill with Sean McCarthy. It's coming up next right here on The Big Hit. And hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the only sports talk show that really matters. It's The Big Hit. As always, I'm your host, Josh Hill, and we are going to begin things with the Red Zone recap once again. Joining me are our NFL analysts on the far left. It's Cody Benjamin, and in the middle, it's Connor Joyce. Gentlemen, let's begin with the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, they were quite simply embarrassed by the New England Patriots. 55-31 was the final score, the most points that the Steelers defense have given up in the history of their franchise. Why were the Patriots so effective against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense?
Well, I think Patriots just had execution, and I think we saw a couple weeks ago, it looked like the Steelers might have been turning things around, but there was just huge holes throughout the day against the Patriots. Patriots had 33 first downs, and like you said, more points and yards against the Steelers than any other team has had against Pittsburgh in the team's history. So they were just executing. It helped that New England was really healthy coming into this game. But obviously, I think this is a pretty clear indication that the Steelers aren't just a few corrections or players away from turning things around.
Josh, all I have to say is Tom Brady, Tom Brady, Tom Brady. 69.7% on his passes this week, 432 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 151.8 quarterback rating. When a quarterback is throwing that accurate, it is hard to beat a quarterback like that. And that's why the Pats were so effective against the Steelers defense, who honestly is not as bad as people think. People are talking about the Steelers as having a very poor defense this year, but they're actually being ranked pretty high on passing. They're in the top 10, and I believe they're number 6 in passing. And the defense is playing well, but when you have a guy like Tom Brady passing the ball like he was, it's hard to beat a guy like that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously 4 touchdowns is a good day, and he was really consistent. But I think Stephen Ridley having over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game, obviously that's a big help.
It is big.
Whenever you have the running game with the Patriots, they're even more dangerous, which is, you know.
No, absolutely. And the thing the Steelers need to start doing is they need to be a little more clutch. They were in the game in the third quarter, and then they blew it. And you can't just blow a game like that, especially against a team like the Patriots.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the Patriots really play well at this time of year. In weeks 9 to 17 since 2010, these guys are 24-3, an astounding record. They really turn it on late. Their offense looked unstoppable, giving up 55 points. The other team has to be playing well to give up that many points. And the Patriots are finally starting to get everyone back healthy, which is very dangerous. Would you guys consider these Patriots Super Bowl contenders?
Absolutely. I mean, when you have all these guys healthy, it's unstoppable almost. Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Dobson, and Amendola, they combined for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. And those are incredible numbers. And I think defense is something that's a little bit overlooked too. The Patriots defense has given up a lot of yards over the last couple of years, but they've had at least 1 turnover in 36 straight games. And whenever you can get turnovers, obviously when you have a team with Tom Brady on the other side of the ball, that's dangerous. Yeah, absolutely. They're a Super Bowl contender.
Oh, absolutely. And when you have a guy like Bill Belichick as coach, you are a Super Bowl contender no matter what. And it's awesome in November, December football. And to see the Patriots playing as well as they are, it's normal. Yeah. For an NFL fan, it's normal to see the Patriots playing how they are. But when they are playing great with the talent, they don't have the talent they usually have. And it's nice to see Gronk finally get in the end zone this week. And it's nice to see that they're finally getting a running game going. Mm-hmm. And the defensive side of the ball, let's give them some credit, because for years and years, the Patriots defense hasn't been known to be anything. It's always been that offense. It used to be Tom Brady, Randy Moss. It was Tom Brady, Gronkowski. Now it's Tom Brady, Gronk is finally back. He's finally playing, but he doesn't have a receiver like he used to. And he's not connecting with guys as well as he has. And he finally had a good week after coming off 2 poor Tom Brady weeks. And that's not what you want as a Patriots fan. But to finally get back into that Tom Brady playing well, it's very promising going here into the end of the season. But they have some tough games coming up. They're playing against guys. They're playing against the Broncos coming up. Their division is tough. They got Miami. The Jets are on fire. And the division is tough. And all those teams in the division are Super Bowl contenders, playoff contenders right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about execution. We just saw on the screen, Tom Brady almost had a perfect quarterback rating against Pittsburgh. Like you said, they don't have as much talent as maybe they usually do, but they still have Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and a lot of playmakers on offense when they're healthy. It's all about execution. So, if they execute, yeah, they'll be
Absolutely.
in the playoffs and they'll go deep.
It truly is normal to see the Patriots doing this time of year. And you guys had mentioned the lack of talent. Tom Brady always looking for his slot receivers. In years past, they had guys like Wes Welker, Aaron Hernandez roaming the slot. This year, Tom Brady on connections to slot receivers, 1 touchdown compared to 4 interceptions. So really that slot receiver position that the Patriots rely heavily on hasn't been there. The return of Gronk certainly should help, though. But
Hopefully.
On the other side of things, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2-6 on the season, something that Steelers fans certainly aren't accustomed to. Would you guys consider scrapping this season and starting to rebuild, so to speak?
I mean, I think no matter how bad your record is, it doesn't mean you just tank the season. But at 2-6, the Steelers aren't a team, as I mentioned earlier, that's a couple players away from turning this thing around. They have $83 million committed to 8 players in 2014. Among those, some of the older guys like Polamalu, and I know he can still be productive, but their defense is aging, and I think this is a team that obviously needs to just regroup and rebuild as a unit. They have a solid chemistry, I think. Mike Tomlin is, I trust him to bring that locker room back to focus, but I definitely think this is a team that needs, some rebuilding going forward.
Well, and the disappointing thing as a Steelers fan is you could have gotten, if you want to rebuild, you should have tried to trade somebody. You could have traded a guy like, if you're trying to get rid of somebody like, I don't know, your cornerbacks, just get somebody out and get some draft picks in. And it's tough now because the trade deadline's now over. And it's important to have those draft picks for a Steelers fan or the Steelers organization. And if they tank the season, they'll get a nice little draft pick. But the NFL, teams don't tank the season. You can go back to a couple years ago. The Colts, they had 1 win going into week 17. And if they had only lost the game, they were guaranteed their number 1 pick. But they they won the game, but they still got that number 1 pick. But you don't tank a season, but you definitely want to start rebuilding. I've been saying this since week 2 as a Steelers fan. Your defense has been aging. Troy Polamalu is not where he used to be. The defense is playing well, but you got players just not where they've been. Ben Roethlisberger isn't playing nearly as well as he was earlier in his career. He's getting old. He's getting beat up. And the offensive line has just been killed all season.
Yeah. Absolutely. And maybe the good luck charm for the Steelers is Cody Benjamin's gold tie, the Steelers gold. That might be the thing that sparked the Steelers for the rest of the season. But let's move on to Philadelphia. They traveled to the West Coast, and Nick Foles, it's safe to say he had himself a day. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, 7 touchdown passes for Nick Foles. Did this guy completely solidify himself as the starting quarterback for the remainder of the season?
Well, I just want to address something very quickly before you go in this. I know 2 weeks ago, Connor really addressed this situation with a ridiculous amount of emphasis, saying Nick Foles is not the answer and pretty clearly indicated that he will not ever be the answer. And I think if a quarterback ties an NFL record for passing touchdowns, he may not be the answer. We still need to give him some time, but that is ridiculous.
How many receivers did he throw to that weren't wide open?
Wait a minute. Also, we're going to look
How
at
many?
this. Riley Cooper.
Was it
one? of these
one?
wide
No,
receivers.
it wasn't one. Was it two? No, was it three? No, it was four. Four wide open receivers.
All right, let's take it easy. All right, what do you have to say?
Well, I'm going to say, I don't really think it matters what receivers he's throwing to. If he throws 7 touchdowns, that's ridiculous. But I think even if Peyton Manning would have played the Raiders and thrown maybe 4 touchdowns, I'll even say 5, people are going to say that's a great day. If Nick Foles throws 7, you have to at least give him some credit and say, all right, maybe let's give this guy a couple more weeks before we write off his career. But I think obviously looking at Chip Kelly's scheme, Mike Vick has the skill set to be the better fit there, but Nick Foles has just been more effective. And I think if he continues to play this way, and maybe not even 7 touchdowns each week, but if he throws, just plays productively, if you're Chip Kelly, how can you put Michael Vick back in the starting lineup?
Well, I agree. You have to see Nick Foles right now. He is the #1 quarterback in Philadelphia until he loses it. If he plays another game like he did in Dallas and Mike Vick comes back healthy, Mike Vick is going to be the quarterback there. But the most impressive thing about Nick Foles this season is that he has 13 touchdowns on the season compared to 6 all last season, and he has 127.4 quarterback rating on the season, which is awesome compared to a lot of quarterbacks right now. And to just see how he's improving as a quarterback is great, but he needs to stay consistent. Granted, he's a young quarterback, and as Josh was telling me earlier, we expect young quarterbacks to be these guys like Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson, and just to come into the league and just be incredible. And it's great to see Foles start improving. And if Chip Kelly can continue to get him out of the pocket, just get him moving like he did this week against Oakland, the Philadelphia Eagles are a team to be watching here towards the end of the season because they don't have a very difficult schedule.
Yeah, and I know we go at it, but I do agree with you that he does need to be consistent. But the key thing, I think, when you said he's thrown 13 touchdowns, he's also thrown no interceptions. And
exactly, which is very impressive.
Yeah, and even in that Dallas game when he was very off target, just on the season to have no picks, that's very key, especially for Chip Kelly's offense.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, great point, guys. And Chip Kelly, something that's weird is in his post-game press conference, he wouldn't even commit to Nick Foles as his starting quarterback going forward after this 7-touchdown performance. Let's see what this guy can do after he plays a couple games and if he can stay healthy. But the NFC East is a very, very bad division. The Eagles are very much alive. Do you think they can win the division and get into the playoffs with Nick Foles at the helm?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the Cowboys are, I think, pretty clearly the best team in this division. But obviously, with Tony Romo, I just, you can't trust that guy in December. And I think, I'm not expecting any more 7-touchdown performances from Foles. But if they can be productive and keep the turnovers minimum, and their defense has actually been playing pretty well, additionally. So I think, I have the Eagles going to the playoffs, but I think it's definitely that last week of the season, Cowboys versus Eagles, I think that will decide that division.
Oh, absolutely. Going back to when Brian Dawkins' last home game, when the last time the Cowboys and Eagles played in a deciding playoff game. I don't know if you remember, but the Eagles just demolished the Cowboys. But no, I absolutely agree. We're still only halfway through the season, but the Eagles are an absolute contender. The defense is finally starting to come around. Granted, their passing defense is
still needs work.
Dead last. It is dead last in the NFL right now.
With the NFC East, these teams all have familiarity with each other. You never know what's going to happen. That division is very much wide open. But we're getting into the latter stages of the NFL season, so I want to get your AFC and NFC playoff predictions. Real quickly, give me your first seeds, 1 through 6, and give me your Super Bowl predictions and who is going to be your Super Bowl champion at this point quickly.
All right, for the AFC, I have the Broncos at the first seed. I think they will beat the Chiefs to finish out this year. I also have the Pats at second. I then have the Bengals, Colts, Chiefs, and I have the Dolphins making it over the Jets. I think that last game of the season is going to be key. And I think the Dolphins, although the Jets have looked very good on defense, I think the Dolphins are a little bit more consistent. In the NFC, I have the Seahawks sticking at the #1 seed. And then I have the Lions, Saints, Eagles, 49ers, and closing that out, the Bears. I think Aaron Rodgers' injury is really going to hurt the Packers. And even without Jay Cutler, the Bears were looking okay. I think with him coming back, they'll be able to secure a spot. For the Super Bowl, I know a lot of people still want to go Broncos, but I'm going to go Seattle over the Indianapolis Colts. I think Andrew Luck's really going to do some damage in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, you know, in the AFC, I love Denver at number 1 with that number 1 offense. It's just unbelievable what they're doing. At number 2, I like the Indianapolis Colts. They are beating teams like San Francisco on the road. They beat Denver at home. They had a nice little comeback last night against Houston. It's nice to see the Colts playing and winning the way they're winning. Then at number 3, I like New England. That you can't count them out to win the division. They're playing very well. Number 4, I like Cincinnati with a number 5 ranked defense and number 9 ranked offense. They're playing really well. And at number 5, I like San Diego with that number 6 offense. They are playing awesome out there in San Diego. People don't really realize with their record. And at number 6, I do like the Miami Dolphins. I think they're going to turn it on here at the end and get wins, because I don't think their schedule is as difficult as people realize. And then in the NFC, I like the Seahawks at number 1 with that number 2 ranked defense and that number 13 ranked offense. They're playing very consistent, and it's really important to have a consistent team coming into the playoffs. Number 2, I like New Orleans. Their offense is just awesome. They're making connections. Drew Brees is just hitting his receivers spot on all game long. And believe it or not, they're a number 9 ranked defense this season, and that's something they haven't been in a while. Detroit, number 3 ranked offense. I like them at the number 3 spot. Dallas, as much as I want the Eagles to win the division, I think Dallas is going to win the division still. The number 5 spot, I like the San Francisco 49ers. You can't count them out. And number 6, the Chicago Bears. They're less hurt than the Green Bay Packers, and I think they're going to squeak in there at the end.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see. Glad you gave the Chargers some love. A big game against the Denver Broncos this week. But that is going to do it for our Red Zone recap segment for Cody Benjamin and Connor Joyce. We're going to send it over to Sean McCarthy, who will have the Rivalry Rampage segment for us coming up next on The Big Hit.
It's gonna get loud.
Thank you, Josh, and welcome back to The Big Hit. We call this segment here Rivalry Rampage, and on my right, I have Mike Snell sporting the Rangers jersey, and on my left, I have Melissa Essing returning here in the Crosby Penguins jersey. Now, guys, I'm going to ask you, these two teams match up on Wednesday night. Who's going to win and why? Mike?
Oh, the answer is quite simple. It's the New York Rangers. Homestand at Madison Square Garden after a long and embarrassing road trip for them, quite frankly. 9-2 loss against San Jose, 6-0 loss against Anaheim. But the Rangers come back and have a lot to prove, and they've proven a lot. They have the heart and they have the determination that former coach John Tortorella left them with. Tough loss against Anaheim on Monday night, 2-1. But guess what? The X factor in this one's the captain's back. Ryan Callahan should be captain of Team USA in the Olympics. I think the New York Rangers, it won't be easy, but I think the Rangers will come out victorious on Wednesday night.
Melissa, how do you respond to that?
How do you feel matching up to the Penguins when currently we are first in the division, first in the conference with 22 points, and your team is fourth in the division and ninth in the conference right now with 12 points?
Well, that was never a problem because Pittsburgh was always a good team, but look where it's got you in the last 3 years. No, absolutely nowhere. You lose, you get swept in the conference finals last year. You get embarrassed the year before.
Okay, you can say that, but when was your last Stanley Cup?
1993. Yours was in 2009.
94, I thought.
94, 93. I was 1 year old.
Okay.
But yours is in 2009.
Yeah, but that's recent.
That's
more
recent, but what have you done since then?
We've definitely been building our team. We've got so many good players right now. We've
Where are
been
they at
adding
now?
to our roster. Where are they at? What do you mean? We have Crosby right now. We
Yeah.
have Malkin, Letang. All of our top scorers are healthy
We've
right now.
added to our team too.
Okay.
Rick Nash,
But
Brad
it hasn't
Richards.
been showing. You know what I'm saying? It hasn't been showing. Where your team, you can say you have consistency because you've been in the playoffs consistently since 2003. But how far have you gotten? What has it shown for your team?
We've developed a lot of good players because of that. Dan Girardi, Ryan McDonough, who we stole from the Montreal Canadiens. Henrik Lundqvist has blossomed into the best goalie in the world. I can't say the same for Pittsburgh. You have a schizophrenic goaltender who shows up good in the regular season, but but what has he done in the postseason lately? He's cost your team single-handedly playoff series, and if it wasn't for Thomas Vokoun, you would have lost to the New York Islanders in the first round.
Fleury does.
I'll give you this. We haven't won a Stanley Cup, and that's failure. That's absolute failure.
Mm-hmm.
That can be blamed on coaching. John Tortorella's system's not really the most offensive system, and he can't get scoring. That's on the players, and I think that's something Alain Vigneault, the new head coach, has really brought in.
Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't shown yet. They know that, and I think it's going to evolve itself because learning a new system's tough, and it takes a little bit.
Back to what you said about the goaltender issue. Yeah, Fleury did choke in the playoffs, and it was embarrassing. It was bad.
Consistently.
He did, but Vokoun picked up his slack. It's unfortunate that we will not be getting Vokoun back. He's out 3 to 6 months. Who knows what's going to happen with his career? That's very unfortunate. But Fleury has shown a lot. Currently, he's winning. What was the stat? He has 10 wins right now. He's leading with that for goaltenders in the NHL. He's doing a good job considerably when he has a lot of slack to pick up on.
That's regular season.
Okay,
I don't care about regular season really. I care what happens in the playoffs.
We're not in the playoffs.
I know,
it's current,
but
so.
I look at what's happening overall, and overall, Fleury is performing like a bottom 3 goaltender instead of a top 3, which he was the first overall pick in 2003.
Hopefully he can build himself back up then for the playoffs this year, and the same
know.
thing won't happen. And we can't really rely on Zatkov because he's a rookie. We're not sure what's happening so far with him. He's still building his confidence, so we're relying heavily on Fleury.
You can't bring in players like you did last year and you didn't have to blow up your team, but Jerome McGinley thing was an abject failure. Brendan Morrow was an abject failure. And Douglas Murray was an abject failure.
We've gotten some great steals now. Scuderi, Megna he's a rookie, but he's been recently hot. He's been great. We've just had a lot of new depth added to our roster.
Now, you're talking about depth, and like you guys mentioned, when Marc-Andre Fleury went down in the playoffs last year and Vokoun said it, I mean, that's part of a team. I mean, it's not just like your star players. That's part of the team. That's the depth of the team. Do you really think that the Rangers, with their backup goaltender in a playoff situation, could do as well as Vokoun did?
I think given the right team, probably. Cameron Talbot's currently the backup goaltender. He's shown
with the team you have right now.
With the team we have right now, I think so. I think if Rick Nash is in the lineup, absolutely. But if Rick Nash isn't in the lineup, I still think that the Rangers can get it done. Defense has been shaky at times, but it's improving. And the offense, we have kids waiting in Hartford right now that are unbelievable. Jesper Foss, Danny Cristo, Oscar Lindberg, Dylan McElrath. Those are our future, and I think those guys can really come in if need be. But if Nash is in the lineup, absolutely. I absolutely think the Rangers can contend.
So let's talk coaching. Who has the better coach right now? Because, I mean, some might show up and say that the Penguins have a better coach, but last year in the playoffs, he made 0 changes when against the Boston Bruins, and the Rangers obviously did not get up to a hot start. So who has a better coaching staff? Melissa, we'll start with you.
Of course, I'd like to say Dan Bylsma does, but yeah, he did fail with not making any significant changes, especially in our series against the Bruins. That was embarrassing for a Pens fan to watch, but I think that he was with us for our last Stanley Cup win. It's just, and that was recent. And in my opinion, if you've won within the last 5 years, that's kind of like a safe point for coaches. I really admire his coaching, even if it was embarrassing in the playoffs this past.
I can't really answer the question for the Rangers because it's a brand new coach. Mm-hmm. But so far, it's been inconsistent. Alain Vigneault coming over from Vancouver, it's a much more open system. But had John Tortorella stuck around, I would say John Tortorella.
Do you
Absolutely.
think John Tortorella would be a better coach fit for this year's team?
No, I think as a coach, if you lose the locker room with players, if they ignore you, which happened, you're as good as dead. I mean, his job was lost in the middle of the season, but I think Alain Vigneault's a perfect fit. It's going to take some time. I mean, it's 82 games instead of 50. So I think,
right.
But right now, I would say Dan Bylsma does have the better. But talk to me in 5 years and see where the Rangers are.
I'm going to give you guys a final word before I declare a winner. So the first final word, Melissa, final thought. What's your end-all story to this argument?
I just think for debating the overall better team currently, you do have a great history with the Rangers. I mean, you guys have 4 Stanley Cups, we have 3. There's a lot of things you could argue for the history, but currently the Penguins are overall #1 in the division, in the conference. You guys can pick yourselves back up there and get back to where we are right now. But it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think as far as tomorrow night's game is going to go, it's going to be interesting. But I think that the Pens have that confidence right now. They're hot right now. So.
Mike,
And I think
final word.
Lundqvist is starting tomorrow. The Rangers are building their confidence. Captain's back, probably the best pure leader in the NHL, Ryan Callahan. Rick Nash is on his way back. He'll be back soon. I just think that overall, I don't think the Penguins play a great amount of defense, and I'm a defensive-minded guy. I like teams playing defense, and they've shown they haven't been able to do that in the past 3 years. And it's the goaltending has suffered. Not yet this year, but it's going to catch up to them. And I think in the Garden, tough place to play. I think this all bodes well for the New York Rangers.
All right, now I'm going to declare a winner, and since this was an argumentative segment, I have to just throw all my ambitions out the window and not be biased, even though both teams I don't like, but I have to say the argument was won by Mike Gosnell, the Rangers. It comes down to defense, comes down to goaltending, and there's none better than Lundqvist right now. So, Mike, you won this round. You guys stay tuned. We have college basketball next on the Big Hit with Josh Hill, Lucy Kitchen, and Freddie Mitchell. Don't go anywhere.
Listen, all I'm saying is LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan.
Why did everybody get so quiet?
Welcome back into the Big Hit. It's time to crash the boards with our NCAA men's basketball preview segment. Really should be a great segment. Joining me for that on the far left, it is Freddie Mitchell, and in the middle, it's Malusi Kitchen. Two real stand-up guys joining us for this segment. And we're going to start with the top 25 rankings. The polls came out. Kentucky is sitting in the #1 spot once again for the second year in a row. And guys, would you consider Kentucky to be the #1 team in the nation?
As of today, right now, I don't consider Kentucky to be the #1 team in the nation. Their team is comprised highly of freshmen who haven't really gone on the court and proven anything yet as collegiate basketball players. Yes, they've been great in high school. They've been doing great in their, those high school games, McDonald's basketball game, like stuff like that. But I think Michigan State right now, or someone like Duke, teams who've been out there who have performed before in the past and have proven that they are what their worth is, what their value is, should be ranked #1 this week, and not a team in Kentucky that has highly comprised of freshman players and sophomore players who just lost in the first round of the NIT last year.
Yeah, well, I think that's the great thing about college basketball is you can bring in a bunch of high school players and you can come together for a year or two and win a national championship. I think Kentucky is the #1 seed in the polls, especially since all the talent they brought in. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the dynamic of how they work together, especially since they're all really, really good players. So we'll see how that works together. But I think Kentucky definitely is the #1 team just based off talent alone.
In the long run, it's not going to matter because next Tuesday they're going to play Michigan State, and we'll really see who's won, who's two anyway.
Together, so that'll be an interesting match
absolutely.
to see.
Great matchup coming up first week, so we'll see really, who shines.
An early test for the Wildcats this young season. They really do a great job of recruiting. Got to give props to John Calipari out there in Kentucky. But let's talk about the ACC. The conference realignment is kind of all over the place. And this year, joining the ACC are Pitt, Syracuse, and Notre Dame. How are these additions going to change the landscape of this conference as a whole?
I think the ACC is now going to, it's going to turn into a powerhouse now with, these teams, Notre Dame coming in as well with, Pitt, Syracuse. All these games that you're going to see, though, all these conference games for the ACC are going to be huge matchups. It's going to be, very much playoff-like atmosphere during these games. I think teams that are, teams that you think, oh, are they on the bubble this year? Virginia Tech, a team we see it's on the bubble a lot, who, doesn't get in. Well, maybe they still win against a team like Notre Dame or Pitt. And now on that resume it says, oh, well, we have this win,
Right.
We can move forward. I think it's going to be great for the ACC basketball.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be competition night in and night out.
Right,
I mean, it's going to be a battle to, these teams, Syracuse, Pitt, Notre Dame. They're going to just dogfight it out, and especially since, it just makes this conference more interesting because in the past, this conference hasn't been that good.
Right.
So these teams bringing these teams in, it's going to make for a dogfight every night, especially since, these teams are they're evenly matched.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be like, one team's going to run away with the conference. So we'll see how that plays out, but it's going to be exciting to watch and all these people.
I think top three teams in the ACC could be Duke, Syracuse, UNC, all those teams could be top 10 by the end of the season very easily.
Any team that comes out of the ACC is definitely going to be battle tested. And my question to you, Who do you have winning the ACC, and why will they win it?
I actually have Duke win the ACC this year in the first year of this new ACC. I think they have the experience. They have the players that can run up and down the floor, play good defense. They could drive the ball. They'd be able to pull from three. And of course, Coach K will be making sure all those guys have 90% or above free throw.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go with Syracuse in their first year. I think they're going to win. I like C.J. Fair. I like Rakeem Christmas coming back. I think they're going to be good leaders for that team, and they're going to spur them to win in their first year. But yeah, I like your pick of Duke. But like we said earlier, it's going to be a tough battle to win this conference, especially since with all the new additions. Like we said earlier, Pitt, Notre Dame, Syracuse, of course, and of course Duke has always been good. So we're just going to have to see how that plays out. But I like Syracuse definitely coming out on top.
Yeah, can't underestimate teams like Miami and Florida State. They're always good for a couple upsets and decent teams in their own right as well. But let's move on to what is formerly known as the Big East as the conference realignment continues, now known as the American Athletic Conference. There's been teams that have come in and come out. One of the teams that is still there in the American Athletic Conference is defending champion Louisville. Is there any team in the conference that can even challenge Louisville to take the conference title from them?
Honestly, I don't really see any team that could step up and beat Louisville for this conference or take this conference title. We were looking at the lineup earlier, and honestly, the only team on there is UConn that's going to be able to make any type of run in this conference. But I think Louisville will just run all over UConn, and I really don't see any team such as Temple or anything like that making a run to win this conference.
Yeah, I have to agree. Louisville, with their superior coaching, Rick Pitino, he's going to coach his guys to be efficient. They don't have the power that they do last year. After losing Payne Siva and all the other good players they had around them, but they're going to run away with this conference. It's not. I don't think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be Kevin Ware coming back, Russ Smith is coming back, so they're going to be leaders of that team to come back.
All the players are coming back, and they're going to be able to perform, and they should have no troubles in this new conference.
And you look at things, they were the defending national champions last year, so until somebody dethrones them, you really think that they would be the favorites going in. And the Big East was one of the basketball powerhouses, but last year the best conference in college basketball was the Big Ten. 4 teams in the top 25, chief among them being Michigan State, who was number 2 in the preseason rankings. Who is your front runner to win the Big Ten this year?
I think Michigan State is definitely a front runner for the Big Ten this year. As we see, teams like Michigan and Ohio State will be there. Maybe Indiana will be in the mix. Who knows? You never know who's going to get an upset in the Big Ten because of how slow-paced those games are in the Big Ten. Low-scoring games in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Look out for Ohio State, and Aaron Kraft. I think that team will have a great mix-up. He'll be a great leader for that team. They can make a run and maybe upset Michigan State somewhere along the line to seal the deal. Who knows? But I think overall, Michigan State.
Yeah, I got Ohio State though. I think Aaron Kraft is going to be a catalyst for them to get back on top. They've always been a good team, but that's going to be a dog conference too. That's going to be very hard to win against them. But I like your pick of Michigan State, but we'll have to see how that plays out.
ACC Big Ten Challenge this year should be a lot of fun to watch.
Absolutely.
All of the starting of college basketball should be a lot of fun to watch. Let's move to the Big 12 now. Moving right along through these conferences here. The Kansas Jayhawks were able to land big-time recruit Andrew Wiggins, probably gone after this year, but he is an absolute stud. And Oklahoma State has arguably the best player in the country in Marcus Smart. These two teams are obviously the favorite to win the Big 12. Do you give your upper hand to one of these teams, or will another team kind of surprise Kansas and Oklahoma State and claim the title this year?
These are clearly the two front runners. I think clearly, I don't think there's any team that's going to surprise us, or a team like someone like West Virginia isn't going to come out and win the Big 12. I don't think you're going to see anything crazy like that happen. Wiggins is going to be great. He's young. He said I want to win a national championship. I want to be number 1 pick. That's it. That's all I want to do. I want to move along. So we'll see what he has. Realistically, though, I look at the leadership that Smart can bring to his team and the experience that he's had with Oklahoma State. All those guys put together have been there for a little while now. I think their experience will prevail, and they will be able to beat Kansas for the regular season.
That's a good pick. But I'm still going to go with the Kansas Jayhawks. I think Andrew Wiggins just I think his will to win and how he reacts around his team is going to have a huge impact on them this season. I think he's going to spur them to have a great regular season and a great tournament run. I don't know if they're going to win the championship, but we'll have to see how that plays out. But I like Andrew Wiggins. I like his character. I like his play. I think he's going to be great with his teammates, and I think they're going to have a great ride. So I expect big things from the Kansas State Hawks.
And that's the exact reason why I picked Kansas. He said, I felt like I was at home. We had a click as soon as I came here. Started meeting players, started feeling good. I think he's going to do real good things as a Jayhawk.
The tradition in Kansas is just unrivaled to many programs in this country. But let's move on to the Pac-12, a very entertaining brand of basketball. They're probably in for a down year, though. They do have 3 teams in the top 25, Arizona, Oregon, and UCLA. Who will win the Pac-12 this year, guys?
I have Arizona. I think they're just a standout team compared to other top teams in the conference, such as Oregon or UCLA. Oregon was great last year, but I think they're going to be on a downfall just a little bit this year compared to years past. I can't really see any of those teams come around to upset Arizona throughout the regular season and getting a win to win the regular season Pac-12.
Yeah, I got Arizona too. They have a lot of freshmen and sophomores on their team, so I don't think they're going to be able to make the big run during the tournament, if they even make it to the tournament, because they don't have that experience and that leadership. But I think they're going to do great in the regular season. I think Jordan Mays is going to be a good leader for him. He's a senior, so we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I like Arizona. I like their chances to have a great regular season. But the tournament, we'll see.
I don't see them competing with powerhouses like Ohio State, Syracuse, Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, teams like that.
Well, yeah, like you said, it's too early. It's too early in the season to see how that is.
So. As well.
Yeah, moving right along to the SEC. We talked about Kentucky, all the freshmen, all the recruits that they have, one of the best teams. Another team to look out for in the SEC is Florida under Billy Donovan. Who's going to be the champions of the SEC this season?
I think this is clearly Kentucky. It's one of their expectations. This freshman all-star team, they're expected to come out. They're expected to win the SEC hands down. They should have no trouble or issues as they go along throughout their regular season, barring injury, of course. But you never know what can happen. It's early, so. But I just can't see Florida or any other team in the SEC making a run against Kentucky.
Yeah, I got Kentucky. This is why all these players came here. They came to win a national championship. Anything less than that is a failure in their eyes. Yeah, but I think, like I said, it's gonna be an interesting conference because, like we've seen before in the NBA, just because you bring together a bunch of talent doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're gonna have a national championship team. So we'll have to see how all they play together, how they work together, how their chemistry is. Who's going to have most of the ball handling and who's going to score most of the points. Because we know, bringing all those top recruits, they all think they should
they're all alpha dogs. They all
want the ball.
They were the top person at their high school. They're going to want to score. They're going to want to be the best player at their university now. So.
But I still have Kentucky coming out of the conference successful.
Hey, great job, guys. We just breezed through all of the conferences in big-time Division I basketball. Let's move to some end-of-the-season accolades. As always, there's a ton of talent, a lot of great athletes in college basketball. Give me your choice to who is going to be the NCAA Player of the Year.
I have a wild card in Aaron Craft. He's a great point guard with awesome playing style. He gets up and down the floor. He's going to get you those assists you need with about 10 points a game, a couple boards. And he also is the leader of that team. He's the floor, he's a floor manager. He's a general of that team. Gets his team up and down the floor, does what they need to do in those pressure situations, and he also could hit that that clutch three when needed to make a shot. I think personally, if Aaron Craft could lead his team, get a win over Michigan State somewhere along the regular season, win the Big Ten maybe, that he could easily be National Player of the Year.
Yeah, my second player to win the NCAA Player of the Year would be Kevin Ware, just because he's coming off an injury. I think he's going to come back stronger than ever. I think his hunger to actually come back and play and prove himself, because I think he really wanted to play in the national championship game, but the injury we all saw last year was intense. Yeah, it was tense and terrible. So, but I want Jabari Parker. I think he for Duke is going to just be amazing.
I can see that.
I think Coach Krzyzewski is going to definitely push him to be a better player.
Absolutely. Crashing the boards. Two real cool dudes, if I say so myself. It's Freddie Mitchell and Malusi Kitching. Stay tuned to the Big Hit, because after the break, Sean McCarthy sits down with Dario Guzman and Michael Martone for the Rapid Fire segment right here on IUP-TV.
Today I'm going to talk about Patty. Patty's best characteristics, she's stupid. Stupid and ugly. Everything she does is ugly. Watch her eat. Watch her stuff her face. Look at her. Greasy hair, dirty fingernails. It makes me want to vomit. Get a life, Patty. Thank you.
Hello and welcome back to The Big Hit. I'm Sean P. McCarthy here with Dario Guzman and Michael Martone. And we call this segment here Rapid Fire. And how it works is these guys are going to get 30 seconds to make their point. And at the end of 30 seconds, they'll hear this sound, which means time is up. So Dario, I'm going to ask you the first question. There are 5 teams in the power conferences of college football who are undefeated. They are Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State, Baylor, and Florida State. Who is truly the best team in the country?
Honestly, when it comes back down to it, Alabama's the best team in the country. They went 33-2 over the past 3 seasons, even though they play in the SEC and the SEC West, the hardest division and the hardest conference in the NCAA over the past couple of years. And they had the second best recruiting class of 2012 with 14 players who were rated 4 stars or higher. They were number 1 overall in defense, allowing 9.8 points per game, and 10th overall in offense with 41.3 points per game. When it comes down to it, Alabama's just dominant on offense, dominant on defense. They've done it, and they've done it before.
Sorry, time's up. Michael?
I'm going with Alabama as well, actually. They have the number 1 defense in the country. And other than the Week 2 42-point shootout with Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M, they have kept every other opponent to under 10 points. And that's playing in this tough division. So that just really impresses me. And I honestly think A.J. McCarron is pretty underrated. He's completing 70% of his passes right now, 16 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. So as a whole, this team is really looking like the best team.
Oh, sorry, time's up. I'm going to have to cut you off. Now, one team outside the original top 25 makes a run in college basketball every year. Who could it be this year?
Honestly, I believe that team is Tennessee. They come back with their senior Jordan McRae, a senior shooting guard averaging 16 points per game. They have Jardell Stokes, a big power forward who's averaging a double-double from last season, and their point guard who averaged 12 points per game with 4 assists. They've been there before. They've made runs before. Jordan McRae, the senior, will lead them. With all the points that they're getting from their big 3 and the presence of Stokes, they will be that team that makes that run into the NCAA. They have the people.
Oh, sorry, time's up right there. Michael, go ahead.
I'm going with Tennessee as well, actually. They originally were in the top 25 in the preseason rankings, but then they were replaced by Baylor in the newest ESPN Power Rankings. But this team is just physical, tough, one of the best defenses in this league, and I think they're going to make other teams struggle offensively. They're going to create tough matchups every week in and week out, and against the glass also, they're going to be one of the better rebounding teams as well. So those are really key points for this team to be.
Oh, no, final thought. Very good, guys. With the first week of the NBA season in the books, who has been the biggest surprise to this point, Dario?
It's got to be Chris Paul. He's leading the league. He's second in scoring, leading the league in assists, averaging 26.5 points per game, shooting 52% of the field, 13 assists per game, leading the Clipper show with Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers obviously likes to have the ball in his point guard's hands. Chris Paul is the general. He's playing his best NBA season ever with an assist-to-turnover ratio of 4.42. He's just been unbelievable, leading the team in scoring, leading his team in assists. He is the leader of that team, and he will lead that team with Doc Rivers.
Oh, very good answer there. Michael, who do you have?
I'm actually going with the 76ers as an entire team. This team in the preseason was projected to be worse than the Bobcats. That is not the case at all. They have beaten the Heat, they've beaten the Bulls, they've beaten the Wizards to get to the record at 3-1. Vastly exceeded expectations, and Michael Carter-Williams has came out of nowhere for this team. He's averaging 20 points per game, and he's also leading on that team in steals and assists with about 3.3 steals per game. And
oh, nice answers. Now, guys, final question. Halfway through the NFL season, who is the favorite to win the Super Bowl?
It's got to be the Seattle Seahawks. They're 8-1, top 10 in scoring, top 10 in rushing. You have Russell Wilson, who's always clutch, Marshawn Lynch, And they haven't played, I understand they haven't played their best game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they're missing a tackle, they're missing a D tackle, they're injured, yet they're still 8-1. They always find a way to win with Russell Wilson leading the helm, their defense with Alicia Boom and Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas at safety, their physical defense, physical on offense, and they can score the ball. They will be the team that is the Super Bowl contender once they get all healthy and they get Chris Young back.
Oh, there it is. We have the Seahawks. Michael, who do you have?
I like your pick, Dario, but I'm going with the Denver Broncos, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that it's their Super Bowl to lose right now. I know some people are going to argue for the Colts, but I like the Colts as well. But Reggie Wayne out for the season. I don't think Andrew Luck is ready to do it on his own yet. Some people might argue the Chiefs. They're undefeated still. But the only team that the Chiefs have played that is above 500 are the Dallas Cowboys. So I think once the Chiefs and the Broncos play, we'll see how good the Chiefs actually are. Peyton Manning has just been...
Oh, very good, guys. Love the answers. We're going to send it back to my man Josh Hill for the Crimson Huddle. They're going to talk a little bit of IUP football with Pat the General Yusko and Anthony Shear. Stay tuned.
Here at the Big Hit, we like to be prepared, because sometimes technology doesn't always work, so we do what we can.
Hey, Sean, hit him up.
This just in, Tim Tebow just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. That's not right.
Maybe we need to prepare just a little more.
And welcome back into the Big Hit. It is time for the Crimson Huddle segment. Joining me for that from the Crimson Hawk Sports Network, very appropriate. On the far left, it's Pat Yusko, and in the middle, it's Anthony Shear. Gentlemen, let's start with the IUP Crimson Hawks football team. They played Clarion last week, and they really got back to form. 42-14 was the final score. They were able to run the ball. The defense got back on track. What impressed you the most about this victory against the Golden Eagles?
A couple things. I think the running game was phenomenal. It's back on track. I feel like DeAntoine Williams is really feeling comfortable behind his healthy offensive line. He's hitting the holes really hard. Mike Box is not making big mistakes. And I feel like if Mike Box would have played more in the second half, we could have seen 60 points or more, a Millersville type game. But I really feel that those are the keys, for sure.
I mean, I agree with you. The running game getting going is a really good thing. But you also have to look at the fact is it's Clarion, and Clarion was 4-5 going into that game. They're not a really great team. The two teams that they've beat the last couple weeks, Mercyhurst and Clarion, are great victories, but they're on the road. You know what I mean? You can't really take anything out of IUP. I did the math, and it's hard when you're a comm manager to do the math. But the teams that they've beat only have a combined 20 victories. So that really says something about their schedule. Their only main victory against a winning team is Cal, and that was at home. Now, they're going to get a bump these next 2 weeks from going against Gannon and potentially Shippensburg, but they need to start beating some of these teams to really start making a push because they're not doing, what they need to do against good teams. Look what they did against Slippery Rock. They really didn't play that well. And Edinburgh, I think they kind of let that hang, but you should beat a team like Clarion because Clarion was on their backup quarterback and at one time had to go to their starting running back because their backup got towards MCL. So I think that they got fortunate the last few weeks playing the teams they got.
But nonetheless, two wins that we definitely needed, and in great fashion too. Not giving up a lot of points and scoring a lot of points.
I agree. I mean, they're doing it, and I love the way the offense is going. I second what you said about the offensive line. The offensive line is doing a great job right now. Mike Box running that no-huddle offense.
He has time.
Yeah, and he's doing a great job. DeAntoine Williams is hitting the holes too, which is very important. They need to get Terrell Barnes and Pat Brewer a little bit more involved, and Sean McVay did a great job in the slot.
Yeah, and Saloth Williams came back, so another weapon for Mike Box. IUP, with that victory, moved to 7-2 on the season, 4-2 in conference. Let's say, hypothetically, that the Hawks get into the playoffs. How far do you think they'll go?
Well, it depends on which Crimson Hawks team shows up. I think that if the team that showed up to beat Clarion Saturday with the second quarter, or the second half rather, there were a lot of penalties that were ridiculous penalties. I mean, they were the unsportsmanlike conducts. I mean, one of those a game, maybe. Every other game, I would be okay with. But when you're putting up a lot of those 15-yarders, just stupid face mask penalties, and now if I remember correctly, a lot of the penalties went in the opposite direction of the Crimson Hawks. It seemed like Clarion had committed the foul, but they did not get the call. So how they handled themselves, I mean, one player was ejected. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Maybe Anthony will remind me in just a second here. But if they play smart, they play clean, they can do that. Teams like Slippery Rock and bigger teams, the teams that have beaten them already this year and potentially can beat them, are going to eat them alive with those quote unquote stupid or immature penalties.
The player you mentioned, his name is Anthony DeGaulle. He got kicked out. He will actually miss the first half of the coming game against Gannon because he won't be able to play, because once you get kicked out of a game, you can't come back until you miss a complete full game. He got kicked out in the second half, so he'll have to miss the first half. I agree with you. The penalties have been an issue for this team for a really long time, but I personally think if they can play to their ability, which we've seen the last few weeks, they can beat anybody in the country. And I mean that. They can beat anybody in the country, have talent all over the place. The two things that's always been a problem for them this year has been health and their inability to be smart and stay out of penalties, excuse me. If they can do those two things, they can beat anybody in the country. And I think they can make the playoffs. They weren't in the regional rankings this week, which is kind of a surprise to me. I think they were sitting probably at 11 or 12. They only announced the top 10, but if you look at it, I think they were at 11th or 12th. And everybody from 4, starting with Slippery Rock, to 9, being Stonehill, can lose in the last 2 weeks. That's Slippery Rock, Virginia State, Bloomsburg, American International, Stonehill, and Shippensburg. Those teams can all lose in the last 2 weeks of the season, and if they all do, then IUP is probably sitting pretty because they can sneak into that final spot at the 6th spot, because I still think the PSAC won't get 4 teams in, they'll get 3. And if Bloomsburg starts falling off a little bit, the argument can be made is if IUP can go to Shippensburg and beat Shippensburg, Bloomsburg lost to Shippensburg at home.
That's a lot of Bergs. You sure Pittsburgh's not third in there somewhere?
Probably somewhere.
Okay.
There's a Pittsburgh State out there somewhere, too.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, and they're a very good football team.
They
as
are
well.
a very good football team.
But if IUP wants to have any chance of sneaking into the top 6, they're going to have to beat the opponent that they have this week, and that is the Gannon Golden Knights. It is senior day. Gannon also 2 losses in conference. I want you guys to preview that game. It's senior day, as I mentioned, and give me a senior on both sides of the ball that will be the biggest impact player for them to win this game.
Man, I really have to think about this one. I have to say Mike Boggs. Last year guy, I know he has a backup in Steve Franco who's going to probably take decent care of the ball next year. But I think a couple episodes ago I gave him as really my key player for this season. He's been the MVP up to that point. Had a little mishap, but I think he's back on his game. Also, Carl Fleming. This past game, I think that he did a much better job of the first hit, the first contact made with the running back, wrapping that player up and putting him on the ground. I just think that that's a huge key. They didn't do that against Edinburgh very well. They had a lot of hits behind the line, but they really couldn't wrap the player up, and they were able to gain extra yards from him.
I'm going to go on defense and offensive line. I'll start offensive line. That's Byron DeValis. DeValis, to me, has to continue to be successful and get this running game going behind an offensive line that had some injuries. And I'm going to go on the defense. I'm going to go Akeem Smith. Okay. Akeem Smith and Larry Gooden have finally put a pressure up the middle and allowed Meisner and Muhammad to get pressure on the outside. Yeah. If those two guys can play well, I think Gannon is a very difficult team. They're up and down. They beat Slippery Rock this year. A lot of people say that was a little bit of because of the weather conditions, but they still beat them. Right. You know what I mean? You can't take away a victory from somebody. I think Gannon's a good football team, and as I mentioned, they will help IUP in the rankings if they win this game, and I think other things can happen. But the next 2 games, really, they're not playing Cheney or Millersville, which teams we saw earlier this year. They're playing legitimate teams that have beat teams before, and I think that's the most important thing for IUP. Even if they don't make the playoffs, but they can still finish 9-2, they're still going to be successful, and that's still a successful season at 9-2. Maybe it's not the success that we all hoped and wanted for this team, but it's still a successful season.
Yeah, and something else you noted too, and I kind of want to make mention of that and kind of give a congratulations to IUP for doing it. Give credit where credit's due. They've been getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and that's making that secondary look a lot better. So I mean, props to the front 7, front 6, whatever they run on any given play. They're doing a great job of caving in on holes and getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And this game will be at Frank Signetti Field, Senior Day against Gannon. One note, it is the Veterans Day game. Any veterans out there, you will get into this game for free, so come out, watch the IUP Crimson Hawks. If you can't, of course, you can watch it on the Crimson Hawks Sports Network. We'll all be there. Anthony Shearer and myself will have the call. Coming up next, right here on the Big Hit, we will send it to Sean McCarthy in the 2-minute drill. Stay tuned.
We're Steelers fans. I'm a Steelers fan. And we're Steelers fans. We're good sports. I'm a good sport.
I'm a good sport.
We always have
a designated
driver. Steelers fans. Steelers fans don't let fans drive drunk. Responsibility. Responsibility has its rewards. Responsibility has its rewards.
Go!
Go! Go Steelers! Go Steelers! Go Steelers! Go Steelers!
Hello, world, and welcome back to the Big Hit. This is a 2-minute drill, and I am Sean P. McCarthy. In case you missed Sunday afternoon's football action because you couldn't figure out how to turn your clock back 1 hour, you missed a career performance by Eagles quarterback Nick Foles. Foles threw for 7 touchdown passes. At first I thought it was a typo, but my producers are telling me that it is in fact correct. Nick joins a list of 6 other players who have also thrown for 7 touchdowns in a single game. Peyton Manning was added to that list week 1 of this year against the Baltimore Ravens. Foles was pulled early in the fourth quarter to prevent injury, as the Eagles went on to win 49-20. Or at least that's what Chip Kelly wants you to think. The real reason Chip took him out was because him and I didn't want Nick Foles solely at the top of the touchdown passes in a single game list. So he has to settle for tied with 6 other people. Foles is just another backup that will leave at season's end to accept a starting job in another city. My bet is that Nick Foles doesn't play a full season anywhere at any point in his career because he's not a good starting quarterback. And the impossible became possible this week. The Jacksonville Jaguars did not lose a game, partly because they were on a bye week, but the coaching staff has to look at that as a positive because there isn't much positive to look at right now. Though the Jaguars did not lose, they are still looking for their first win, and they should continue to keep looking because they aren't going to find a win in Jacksonville. While we're talking NFL, I will hand out my Churlish Player of the Week award. This week's most churlish player is Richie Incognito. The Miami Dolphins veteran guard has been suspended indefinitely after harassing and bullying fellow teammate Jonathan Martin. This isn't a rookie-hazy issue because Martin is in his 2nd year. Incognito has been accused of threatening Martin and even was accused of using racial slurs towards him. Richie Incognito, stay incognito because you are churlish. And fire up the Duck Boats because the Red Sox have won the World Series. They defeated the St. Louis Cardinals in Game 6 with a score of 6-1. The men sporting shaggy beards and unbuttoned shirts captured the franchise's 8th World Series title and the 3rd in 10 years. As expected, David Ortiz was named the World Series MVP. No surprise there. The celebration parade took place over this weekend, and on Saturday night, Red Sox first baseman Mike Napoli was seen shirtless wandering around the city of Boston. Napoli came under some criticism for his drunken actions all throughout the night, but the guy just won a championship. In my mind, he can do whatever he wants because he became an instant hero in Beantown the second he became a champion. On a more responsible side, the Red Sox players placed the World Series trophy at the finish line of the Boston Marathon with a Boston Strong jersey over top of it. This is yet another act of respect and integrity by the members of the Red Sox. They have paid everybody involved a good tribute. They've done it for people involved in the bombing that occurred last April. They did it for everybody that ran the marathon. They did it for the policemen and the first responders there. They did it for everybody in the city for Boston. It symbolized and demonstrated this country's unity and valor when in the face of tragedy, whether it be overseas or domestic, America prevails. That concludes this week's episode of The Big Hit. For Director Danielle Eberly, producers Dan Walsh and Dimitri George, I'm Sean P. McCarthy. Don't be churlish, keep it fresh.